Hey Unexplained Ones, this is Dr. Mounts, and thanks for tuning in to All Things Unexplained, where we talk about everything from Bigfoot to UFOs to astrophysics and everything in between. So if that sort of thing's for you, make sure to follow us wherever you podcast, along with a review and a rating. It takes a lot to get All Things Unexplained on the air, and this podcast is made possible by listeners like you. You can support the show by checking us out on Linktree at ATU Podcast. That's ATU Podcast. There you'll find links to all our socials. You can support us on Venmo. You can purchase your official All Things Unexplained merchandise, and you can even book us on Cameo. And now, let's get to the show.
Previously on All Things Unexplained.
Expert coming on, Chris O'Brien.
The perfect person to have come on and talk to us about cattle mutilation.
This all has a very X-Files feel to it to me now that we've got law enforcement involved in Texas, and I think that's part of the fascination too, right?
Well, there's other things here. You want let me blow your mind.
All Things Unexplained. Hosted by Dr. Mounts.
Let's face it, we were always ready to roll without him anyway.
CJ Derringer.
Ain't nobody perfect, right?
And Smitty Neebs.
I've never planned out hardly anything my whole life. I just freeball.
Featuring Cajun Man.
I'm just old nobody, somebody looking for somebody.
Well, there's other things here. You want let me blow your mind. I find that when you have waves of UFO sightings, strange things are going on alongside that. Whether it's weird weather, aberrant social behavior, coincidental, just strange events in the culture, and right a hop, skip, and a jump away from where the Madison County mutilation occurred. This guy shot 10 people and killed 5 of his neighbors. That's just within a stone's throw of where the cow was found. Same in Oklahoma. You had a case outside of Lawton, Oklahoma, and it's not as close as the other case, but you had the other case where the little kid shot 7 people. I don't know if it was a family but it was just a few days later that we had this other case where 7 people were shot. I had a case where we had a wave of UFO sightings, we had mutilations, and right at the height of this, the weekend at the height of this, there was a wedding of a kind of a socialite family in the San Luis Valley, and their daughter was getting married, and the younger sister was the maid of honor. And they had the wedding, and the maid of honor ended up grabbing a knife and killing her sister, knifing her sister to death at the wedding.
Holy.
So there's oftentimes there are attendant, inexplicable societal events that occur along with weird weather, strange breakouts of blight. We had one that same weekend that the girl got knifed. We had a bunch. We had a dozen fires, including some really strange fires that were never explained. So I think that's important to note, that there seems to be some sort of correlation between some of these strange, aberrant events in conjunction with the appearance of these cattle cases.
What do you think the link is?
I have no idea.
Wait, I want to know. I want to know what do you think the link is, and which usually comes first?
It's like something in the air, some weird vibe.
Yeah.
That's what Eric Bard the lead investigator, Skinwalker Ranch, he told us, Chris, he would love to find a common thread to all these anomalous events that are happening there. And what you just told us reminds me so much of the description of the biblical plagues as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Just one thing after another.
Yeah.
So I want to go back real quick to the two theories that you shared with us, and I believe you have more, but the two that you have shared so far is this possibility that people are looking for signs of radiation or mad cow disease.
Well, environmental elements that could get into the food chain.
So the theory is somebody is taking these cows apart to look for signs of this, and they're mutilating them in such a way to get us off the scent of what they're doing. Do you think it's some sort of government cover-up?
Yeah, I think that the government's involved, putting possibly red herring cases, possibly cases to find out. Let's say they have figured out what they're looking for. Maybe when a case or two happens, and they go and they look for it too. So it could be an attendant alongside phenomenon, and it can be possibly subterfuge to keep people like myself and other investigators back on our heels and keep us confused by giving us red herring cases. I do think that there's a lot of patty cake going on. There's some game playing that's happening here. I've had enough of these cases and seen them unfold. In seeing the various types of handiwork, very few of these cases are drained of blood, number one. Very few of these cases, if hardly any, are cut with high heat. You hear cookie cutter incisions. We only have a handful of cases like that. These are descriptions that are being used by certain investigators to mystery monger cases, to make them appear to be alien perpetrated in high strange, and to ratchet up the mysterious aspect of these things, when the average case doesn't have anything to do with any of those descriptions that I mentioned. I've had ranchers tell me, look, they drained this thing of blood. And I said, come on, roll up your sleeves and give me a hand, and we'll take the thing and we'll flip it over, and any of the orifice on the cuts on the upper side become faucets where all the fluids come rushing out, because when an animal dies, gravity pulls all the blood to the bottom of the body cavity and you can't see it. It's only when you cut into the meat and find gray colored meat, or maybe slightly pinkish, that you can determine that the animal's been drained of fluids and the constituents that go into blood, the hemoglobin and the red blood cells and the serum and what have you. I have had cases that were drained of blood, but out of 200, it's only a handful. So many of these cases are dropped from a considerable height.
I'm sorry, the animal has been dropped from a considerable height?
Dropped, yeah. Yeah, these animals are being picked up, taken somewhere, experimented on, and then brought back and dropped in a different part of the pasture. That's why you never find clues, is because they don't drop them where they pick them up from. And what they do is they drop them elsewhere, so wherever they drop them, you can't find any sort of clues or crime scene evidence because they're in the wrong place.
And that, you know what, that's what I wonder too. They said the Madison County Sheriffs gave us so much information and so many details. What did they not tell us?
Yeah, well, I don't know how proficient these guys are in doing this type of investigative work. It is a little specialized.
Well, it makes me think of what you just said, Chris, about, and this is mind-blowing, by the way, that some of these animals show signs of being dropped from very high heights, broken bones and that sort of thing. And
again, a dog would be scared by that, would be roused by that, I would think.
Not necessarily.
A cow dropping from up in the sky, that's going to make a noise when it hits. I mean, these ranch dogs can...
They generally don't drop them back near the ranch house.
Okay.
I mean, I have had cases where, the animal was supposed to be 2 miles away, 5 fence lines away, and was dropped on the porch. And they didn't hear anything. So when you find animals that we cut into one, and I had the vet come, it came out and did a cursory necropsy, and he found that all the ribs had been broken off right next to the spine, as if the animal had been dropped from a considerable height. I've had animals with twisted necks, broken horns. In fact, one of the cases in Oklahoma, both the horns were snapped off. And you can only do that if you drop the animal from, anywhere from 10, 15 feet or above.
So, okay, we're taking aliens off the table for a moment. We're now thinking that somebody in the government is picking these cows up somehow, taking them somewhere, and then dropping them from a helicopter over. I mean, how?
Or it could be the beef industry.
Or a private industry.
Yeah, or private industry, or the National Institutes of Health, or the Center for Disease Control.
So what kind of vehicle do they use to drop these things off that's not heard?
It would be. We've had almost 400 helicopter sightings in and around mutilation sites in close proximity to mutilation cases, and I personally have seen helicopters that were completely silent. And I had one case where the rancher, he heard the thumping sound of something hitting his roof. It was late at night, and he got up and he looked out, and his trees were whipping around. He said, what's going on? We're not supposed to have any wind tonight. So he went outside, and the big cottonwood trees next to his house were whipping around, because right above them was this huge helicopter, not a little one, a big one. And he could hear the sound of the blades cutting through the air, but there was absolutely no engine sound. And this thing was whipping that tree and knocking branches off that were hitting his roof, and then it flew away. He went out the next morning, and 4 of his cows were mutilated.
Wow. CJ, there absolutely are purported silent helicopters. I can't remember what they call them, black helicopters, something like that, or dark helicopters. And CJ and Chris, you'll appreciate this. A friend of CJ of mine, I won't say his name, but he plays volleyball with us. He has noticed, an ex-military man, he noticed that, okay, yeah, I hear Blackhawks go over every night at like 3 a.m. And I hear them too. I hear them come over here, right? And what are they doing? We don't know. But you know what? We never get up and go outside and look either.
Yeah, but you hear them.
We do. But what about the ones we don't hear?
Well, McDonnell Douglas, they had an ad that they used to play for conferences, and when they went out to sell, to approach different municipalities who were buying helicopters, and they had an ad, and it's a dog on the porch facing you, and you can hear all the sounds of the environment, and behind the dog is a helicopter comes down, and it hovers there for a minute, and then it goes back up, and the person operating the camera goes, kind of says something to the dog and says, come on, and the dog comes over. And the dog never noticed the helicopter that was maybe 30 feet away, 40 feet away. And then the tagline is, some people say there's no such thing as silent helicopters. And it's like,
wow.
we beg to differ, or, they haven't seen ours.
It would definitely explain people seeing, beams of light come down at the same time as these cattle mutilations or what have you. It's just also crazy to me. It seems like there's no straightforward answer.
No.
This is exactly what it is. And Chris, at some point I've thought to myself, maybe you're a double agent. Maybe you are working for the government and you're trying to throw us off the scent because you know more about aliens.
No.
Cue the X-Files. We'll save that for closed session.
Some of that, I think, sir, will stay for closed session.
I've never worked for the government. I don't plan on working for the government.
It's exactly what somebody else said on our show, and I question him too.
I'm a private individual. I can't say that if I, you can't. It's like if somebody asks you if you're a cop, that you got to admit if you are, right? You can't say no and continue being a cop undercover. No, I'm not. I wish I was, then I'd be getting paid.
I'm only teasing you. I'm only teasing you.
So, CJ, this is very interesting. Headline May 12th, 2022. This is on cuttingdynamics.com. The mystery of the stealth Black Hawk helicopter. So we're all aware of the Black Hawks used for disaster assistance, rescue missions, military operations, and more. But one thing that almost nothing is known about is the military's secret stealth Black Hawk. So very interesting. That was headline last year.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, they've been around for a while, and they have. It's called whisper mode. It's a whisper mode that they have that a lot of helicopters have it now. The completely silent ones have noise cancellation. What they do is they have speakers that broadcast the exact opposite sound of the engine, and when they play it, it cancels out the engine sound. And it's similar to the way
Wild.
visual cloaking works in a similar way, but visually.
My goodness.
And we have a listener named Tamara that says this reminds her of the movie Nope.
Yeah.
There was mutilation items. Have you seen that, Chris?
I have.
Yeah.
I'm a big Jordan Peele fan.
It was a very interesting take on the UFO phenomenon. I don't think CJ has seen that yet.
No. Nope.
No.
Haven't.
Well, there weren't mutilations. When they sucked up all the people, they ground them up. They didn't mutilate them.
Yeah, it's not for me. So we've learned so much in this show about cattle mutilation. And what would you say to those people that are out there coming up with their own theories, wild or not? You've now had a lot of experience in this field. What would be your advice to those of us?
Well, my advice would be to don't believe what the pop culture versions and the people that have an agenda in terms of promoting their own personal theories. I have an open mind and attempt to look at this as objectively and dispassionately as I can. And I'm being intellectually honest. I'm not putting all my chips, in one basket, so to speak, and running around looking for proof in data that supports my particular pet theory. Stay away from people like that. Buy my book if you're interested in the mystery. I mean, Stalking the Herd is the only real objective book that's been written examining this whole thing, and it's it was 900 pages, and I had to cut 300 pages out, so it's a complete case history of the phenomenon, or as complete as I could make it, and it looks at our relationship with cattle, and it looks at the possible rationale of why somebody or something is going around doing this to cattle, and I get into the history of all the theories. Like the theory of Satanists and cults actually is because of ufology. J. Allen Hynek and Jerome Clark and Kevin Randall in 1973 convinced the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms to listen to these two Texas inmates who claimed that they were part of a Satanist group that was responsible for mutilating cattle, and it turns out they just were trying to get into a medium or minimum security prison instead of a maximum security prison where they were, and figuring if they came up with this story, they could possibly get, for their help, be moved to a nicer facility. And it turns out that their story didn't hold up, and they got busted for just BSing, basically.
We haven't gotten busted for that on our show yet, but it's coming, I can tell.
Well, what happened was that the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, at the behest of J. Allen Hynek, sent every county sheriff in this country a memo saying, watch out for cultists and Satanists who are probably the ones responsible for mutilating cattle. And now, 50 years later, the first headline you'll see is cultists blamed for mutilations.
Right.
And it all stems from that. There was no talk of Satanists or devil worshippers and cattle mutilations through the early 70s. It wasn't until this guy named Donald Flickinger, who was a BATF agent, who was listening to Hynek, he's the one that sent the memo out. And then after that, all the sheriffs, they said, well, if the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms guys thinks it's Satanist, that must be it. And so when the newspaper would call about the local rancher getting his mutilation case, they go, well, we're looking out for them Satanists, and it became this meme that has echoed through the culture for 50 years now. I trace back all the potential explanations. I trace it all back to where it comes from, and it's fascinating. It took me a long time to put together. I worked on this book for 22 years, and it took me 18 months to write. So it is objective. It doesn't have an agenda. It attempts to the best of my ability to present the facts as accurately and dispassionately as I possibly can. It's not a coffee table book full of, bloody, colored, salacious pictures.
Well, that's promising. And so, just for our listeners that are listening on the podcast, this is Chris O'Brien that we're chatting with. And what is the website that people could go to purchase this book?
We'll just go to Amazon. And just put in Stalking the Herd. Ever since I did the Tucker Carlson show, the book's been flying off the shelves. So get yours in. Yeah, I did.
Get yours today.
I was expecting a real boatload of flack for doing it, but a lot of ranchers and farmers listen to Tucker Carlson, so it's an apolitical subject, and so I figured, hey, let's. Right. They offered to have me on, so. Let me get out there and try to communicate directly with, millions of people.
Yeah.
I'm really attempting to be a good investigator and be a good researcher and not cloud the issue with my own judgments and my own particular pet theories.
Well, we appreciate that, and we certainly appreciate you jumping on here with us. I'm not sure how far Tim and I could have gotten just talking on our own about cattle mutilation.
We were pretty much at the end.
Yeah, we were like, all right, it's been 5 minutes, and that's all that we know. So thank goodness you saved the day there. Well, thank you to those that gave us comments and questions this evening, and please do send us your questions your way on all of our social media pages.
Chris's story, it made me think how I'm so skeptical every time I read in the news about when a certain group gets blamed for doing something, because talking about the Satanists, I had these devoutly religious Pentecostal friends growing up, but one weekend they went out in the woods, this old abandoned kind of shack out there, and they just spray painted all the satanic things they could think of all over the place, and the news kind of picked up on it somehow. Next thing you know, boom, all over the headlines, Satanist running amok in the woods, sacrificing animals, all this stuff, and it was the devoutly religious Pentecostal friends of mine. So it's like, you just don't ever know. You never know.
What good friends you keep.
Yeah, I know. They've gone on to be successful people, but you never know. So we appreciate having Chris O'Brien on the show with us tonight. Thank you so much. As we like to say, We had somebody tell us the skies are not classified. The woods so far are not classified. You know, we can collect our own data, get off our phones, get off our screens, look up into the skies, look out into the woods. Don't be afraid to collect your own data.
Yeah, good point. If you do discover something, be sure to notify CJ and Dr. Mounts, and they will get in touch with me.
There you go.
and they will get in touch with me. I made the mistake of giving out my email address one time, and we had a bunch of cases happen, and I just it took me weeks to catch up with all my email and stuff. So.
Funny you should mention that, Chris. We just did a show with Travis Walton, the one and only, and the producer of his documentary, and she accidentally gave out my cell phone number to everybody in the universe.
Live to everybody.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Oh boy. Oh well.
So I've been getting some unique messages here lately.
Yeah, Jen deserves a little spanking for that, boy. I've known Travis and Jen Stein for a lot of years. So.
Oh, really? They were amazing. Don't get me wrong. They were amazing.
Yes. Yeah, they were fantastic, though. They were so fun to have.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Gosh, I'm telling you, this circle is small between the Skinwalker Ranch and, yeah.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, she may be coming through North Carolina this summer.
Yeah.
Staying the night at CJ's house. I'm not making this up, and doing a screening for us of the Travis documentary and some local MUFON folks.
Well, you had 2 cases right outside of Fort Bragg down there of Fayetteville fairly recently. So, and those are, I think, the second and third case ever reported in North Carolina. So
we're gonna have to do some research.
And it's a creepy place. I just drove through Fayetteville this past weekend.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much. This has been super enlightening, and we appreciate you answering all of our questions and sharing your knowledge. And for everybody tuning in, stay happy, stay strange, and keep listening to All Things Unexplained.
Good night, everybody.
Until next time.
You've been listening to All Things Unexplained. If you liked this podcast, please do give us a 5-star rating and leave us a review. If you would like to hear more All Things Unexplained, be sure to follow us wherever you listen to your podcasts. Our show depends on the support of listeners like you. Find us on Venmo under the business accounts at Bigfoot UFO. If you can't get enough of us, please check us out at allthings-unexplained.com. A special thanks to our producer, director, sound mixer, editor, and the man who wears far too many hats. No, seriously, he wears a lot of hats. Dr. Tim Mounts. Without you, we couldn't keep the lights on. Thanks for listening to All Things Unexplained.